Never did I imagine my world would fall apart in a single moment. But then I saw the photos. My wife, Paige, wrapped in another man's arms, smiling as if I didn't exist. She lied to my face, said it was just a study group. But the truth? It hit harder than I could imagine. In that dark bar, she wasn't studying. She was betraying me. Now, I'm not the kind of man who just forgives and moves on. No. I'm going to make her feel every ounce of pain she's given me. This isn't heartbreak. This is war. Chapter 1. A surprising conflict. I walked back to my desk, feeling a bit unsteady. It took me some time in the quiet of my cubicle to calm down. I managed to keep my cool during the meeting, and I don't think anyone noticed that I was shaken. I was, but she had no idea. I learned to hide my feelings when I was younger, and I had gotten pretty good at it. Maybe that helped me get through this situation. As I settled in, I looked at the reports on my desk and noticed the newspaper sitting on top. It was opened to the horoscopes, and mine was circled. This was a running joke between Cheryl, the receptionist, and me. I smiled at what it said. Wednesday will bring big changes in your family life. Welcome this new situation and it will bring you happiness. Clearly, the prediction was off once again. Just a little while ago, I had my first major talking to from my boss. It was quite loud and heated. Still, I wasn't angry with her. I just felt confused. My worry lessened, but I still didn't understand why I was being singled out or where to focus my feelings. This was so unusual for her. We had worked together for 5 years, and she had been my manager for the last 2. She had never shown any disappointment in my work before. In fact, she had always been my biggest supporter, and I had received promotions and awards because of it. In the past, I would have thought back on my actions, trying to figure out how to win her approval again. But I had matured since my early days at the company, and Noelle was more like a good friend than a mentor now. Sometimes, like today, this made things confusing. It certainly made my reaction more complicated. Not only was she upset, but she also seemed very frustrated. I was preparing for an important presentation when she expressed her concerns about not checking the availability of a small item we didn't even need. Her criticism felt misplaced, and I could see where the problem lay even before I pointed it out calmly. I couldn't believe she meant what she was saying. After she finished discussing what she saw as my mistakes, she questioned whether I was suited for the job. The whole situation made even less sense as time went on. Luckily, I managed to step away after a long pause in our conversation. It's hard to argue with yourself, and my silence made it easy to leave. It was hard for me to accept that Noelle and I could be on different sides of any disagreement. We often shared similar views and genuinely cared for each other. She had guided me when I joined the company, and we had become friends almost right away. I thought of her as a sister, and I had no doubt she felt the same way about me. I was really worried about how our personal relationship was changing. Something was bothering her, and I figured it wasn't because of work or me. Once I realized this, I quickly went back to her office. It was lunchtime, and her door was closed, which was unusual. I knocked firmly and went in when I heard her. She was sitting at her desk, elbows resting on it and her head in her hands. As I sat down, she hardly looked at me, but I could see she was upset. Before I could say anything, she started to speak. "Peter, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean what I said. It wasn't fair to you." Then she started to cry, and tears flowed down her face as she looked down. I suddenly found myself kneeling beside her. I thought about comforting her with a gentle gesture, but decided to just speak softly near her ear instead. "Hey, I'm okay. I could tell something was wrong. Do you want to talk about it?" "No, I know you want to help, but it's not something I can talk about with you. I don't mean it like that." She tried to meet my eyes then, but she was fidgeting with her wedding ring. "I'll be fine in a moment. You don't need to stay." "Sam?" I said. She closed her eyes, and I understood. Maybe it was a birthday or an anniversary or a song that reminded her of her late husband. Whatever it was, it brought back memories, and I was the one she could open up to. Perhaps that was part of our friendship. "Please go home. I'm okay here. You should take care of yourself. Do you want me to drive you?" "Who says I'm going home?" she shot back, looking at me with a determined stare. I wasn't in the mood to back down, so I replied in the same tone. "I did? Or do you want to hear that from Sanderson?" I said it jokingly, but I knew it would have an effect. Sanderson was our branch manager and her boss. She didn't want him involved in her personal life. I could tell that mentioning his name made her reconsider. Her expression changed, and I could see it. "Is there someone I can call for you? You shouldn't be alone. I can leave too if you want." Noelle looked at me surprised, as if I had suggested something unexpected. Clearly, she wasn't looking for company at her home. "I can call my mother. She's there now, and I can get home myself." She stood up, signaling for me to rise too. Our offices were in downtown Philadelphia, and both our homes were within walking distance. It was about a 10-minute walk to her place. I would have been happy to walk her there if she had been more open to it, but I understood her need for space, so I didn't press further. I worried about my friend. She was strong and had a lot of good qualities. I had learned a lot from her over the years, and our time together was very important to me. She was a great manager, a fantastic salesperson, and a true friend. It amazed me how she managed to do such a good job while maintaining boundaries with upper management. In her job, she was respected by her customers for being honest and upright. She never took shortcuts to make a sale, didn't exaggerate what her products could do, and always kept her promises. When she was promoted to management, many of our biggest clients refused to work with anyone else. They wanted her as their salesperson. Because of this, she was the only manager I knew who still had direct clients. As a manager, she was brave. I had seen her stand up to Sanderson about customer issues many times. That was quite an achievement. Sanderson was a strong leader who didn't tolerate mistakes and expected clear communication. Most managers were afraid of him, but Noelle was different. Because of this, he respected her. My friend had one major challenge, her late husband, who she still grieved deeply. He had passed away 5 years ago, but it was only in the last year that she began to show signs of healing. I took pride in helping her move forward during our late-night talks. It took a long time to encourage her to be more stylish and friendly with her coworkers. Those who worked under her adored her, but others sometimes found her hard to read. While she mostly wore pantsuits, occasionally she would wear more feminine outfits. She also started to wear a bit more makeup, smile more, and join in on light conversations. She still pulled out her reading glasses whenever she needed to, and her hair was usually tied back in a tight braid, but I was working on that too. I often thought it would have been better for her if our offices were on the same floor as the rest of the sales and admin teams. Currently, our offices were located near classrooms and conference rooms, which fed into her wish for privacy. Ironically, our jobs involved a lot of public speaking, and she was very good at it. Even with her reserved nature, there were a few men who tried to express interest in her occasionally. It all began when she decided to wear a dress. I always thought she was beautiful, so watching her politely decline admirers was a bit amusing. When she let her hair down, she resembled a younger version of the actress Celia Ward, but I never told her. I didn't want to make her feel shy. But then something changed. Just as people at work were starting to see her kind heart, she had a setback. I hoped her outburst was only with me and that she hadn't shared it with anyone else. I should have noticed the signs. Yesterday, she seemed more reserved when we spoke. I kept asking if everything was okay, but she brushed me off. Even our conversation at the end of the day was all about work, which was another hint that something was wrong. This incident was puzzling. In the 5 years I'd known her, I had never seen her so upset. After she left the office, my day got worse. Noelle was absent for the next 2 days, leaving me to manage the team. It was an experience I didn't want to repeat. Those days felt much longer than they actually were. By the end of the week, I realized I didn't enjoy managing people. You see, I work in sales. My path here was different from most. I graduated with a degree in accounting. I liked numbers but didn't enjoy being an accountant. So a year after that, I got a job as a systems tech for a big company. They found that I had a talent for technology, and I spent a year learning the ins and outs of it. I loved that job. 2 years later, they moved me into sales where I worked on bigger projects. I discovered that I could motivate others pretty well. I'm not a cheerleader, but I can quickly recognize what makes people tick. I can help them become excited about selling our products. I can also sense when someone is apprehensive during a sales call. I never expected these skills to make me a good salesperson, but they did. So when I stepped in for Noelle as manager that week, I faced several situations where just motivating my teammates was the right approach. Most of the time, my coworkers already knew how to solve their problems. I just guided them in the right direction. That part of the job was enjoyable because I felt ready for it and did well. What I wasn't ready for was the number of meetings. There were so many requests for meetings over small issues, and it was exhausting. I really didn't like the office work and was shocked at how much of it piled up in just 2.5 days. A lot of decisions were made by management that should have been made by the employees. When you looked closely, these problems often came down to trust. Management didn't seem to trust us, so they made the system complicated with a lot of paperwork. Big organizations often mix up the papers with what really needs to happen. By late Friday, I was eager for Noelle to come back. I had called her several times during the week to check in, but didn't share too much about work. I was relieved to hear her familiar voice. We even managed to laugh about some amusing disagreements she had with her mom. Looking back at that week, I realized that if I hadn't been so focused on work, I might have missed some issues at home. Chapter 2. Another course of study. On Tuesday of the next week, I was busy getting ready for an important meeting with high-level guests, like CIOs, CFOs, and CEOs. We had a speaker who was an economist, and he had specific requests for how he wanted the room set up. I had just finished rearranging the tables to fit the new setup. This layout would allow for only 20 people, but each person would have plenty of space for their materials. I chuckled to myself as I thought about how I ended up moving furniture. I figured this was part of the job description that said, "and other duties as required," which was something they hadn't mentioned in my interview. Just as I was testing the projector, my phone rang. "Hello, Peter speaking. Mr. Stewart?" I recognized the voice of Tim Sullivan, our intern from last summer. He had just returned to school, so I was surprised to hear from him. "Tim, how are you? And please, just call me Peter. What's going on?" "Peter, are you in the center? I need to see you about something important." "Sure, I'm here. I'm setting up for a meeting tomorrow, so I'll be around this afternoon. Do you want to talk now?" "No, it's not something we can discuss over the phone. It's something I need to show you." "Okay, you could send it to me." "It's not that simple. Do you have time around 4? I can bring it to you." I could sense the urgency in his voice. Tim was usually calm, which was why we asked him to come back for a second summer. If he needed my help, I was happy to make time. 4 works for me. I'll see you then, I said. "Thanks, Peter. I wish I didn't have to be mysterious, but it is important." "No problem." "Bye." After putting my phone back in my pocket, I noticed someone moving near the doorway. Noelle walked in, taking a look at the changes I had made to the room. My face must have shown something unusual because she asked, "Is everything okay?" "Yes," I replied, bringing back my smile. "I just got a call from Tim Sullivan, that's all." "Tim? How is he?" she said, a smile forming on her face. Noelle rarely smiled at work unless she was with Tim or me. "He's doing well as far as I know. He plans to stop by this afternoon. Please tell him I said hello if I don't see him later." "I will." Noelle left quietly, just as she had come in. She had a reputation for being very detail-oriented. Standing there was her way of checking if I was prepared for our guests tomorrow. This wasn't a judgment of my work. It was just her style. Most of my co-workers found her presence a bit intimidating, but I enjoyed our interactions and found her company pleasant. The rest of the day went as usual. A little after 4, the receptionist paged me to say Tim was in the lobby, so I went out to greet him. Tim approached me wearing a smile that didn't seem entirely natural. There was some worry in his eyes, but I couldn't figure out why. Whatever brought him here, it felt serious. "Hi, Tim, how can I help?" I tried to sound reassuring. "Peter, can we use one of the small meeting rooms? I need to show you something, and it's something just for you." I led him to the first open room. I stepped in first, and he followed, closing and locking the door behind us. He took off his backpack and sat at the table, then pulled out a big brown envelope and handed it to me. "I'm sorry this is so dramatic, but I think you'll understand once you see this," he said. I opened the envelope and took out 4 large photographs. After looking closely at the first 2, I placed them in front of me. I studied each one carefully. I felt my vision start to blur, and I found myself blinking a lot. I exhaled, feeling a mix of emotions. All the photos showed my wife with another man. They were sitting at a bar, at a distance from the person taking the pictures. The images were a bit blurry, but I could still see what was happening. In the first two photos, the man's hand placement indicated a level of familiarity. They were leaning into each other, and my wife's arm wrapped around him, creating an impression of a shared moment. The other photos showed them with an air of closeness. It was evident that these were not just casual interactions. Once I could see clearly again, I looked up into Tim's eyes. He was watching me closely, looking concerned. "How did you get these pictures, and when were they taken?" I asked, surprised by how my voice sounded. "I work part-time at a restaurant on Penn's campus at night. About a week ago, I was serving a table of 6, a couple celebrating their engagement with their friends. They were sitting in the main dining room near the bar. There was a girl in that group taking lots of pictures and blocking the aisle. When I asked her to clear the way, I noticed your wife and another man in the background. I recognized her right away. I let her keep taking pictures but explained what was happening. I then offered her $20 to focus on the couple sitting by the bar. I stepped out of their view while she took the shots. She emailed them to me the next day. I was hoping it wasn't your wife. I'm really sorry." "How long were they there?" "I'd say at least a couple of hours. They seemed very engaged with each other the whole time." I could see the concern in Tim's eyes. He had met my wife, Paige, several times. The first time was when she picked me up from work last summer. Recently, they chatted at a farewell dinner for him at Noelle's house just a month ago. Paige had talked a lot then, so he knew she was going back to school for her MBA. I looked closely at the pictures again. Who was this man with my wife? I didn't recognize him. He was casually dressed in jeans and a jacket. I couldn't see his shoes. His light blonde hair was styled, suggesting he visited a salon regularly. Next to Paige, he looked much larger and probably taller. Paige was 5'9", so I guessed he was around 6'4". He seemed to be in his late 20s, about my age or maybe younger. They appeared unaware of their surroundings, looking like they had come in alone. The pictures showed that they seemed indifferent to anyone noticing them. Had they been close? Oh no. Suddenly, a wave of pain hit my stomach like a punch. I winced from the imagined blow and pushed away from the table, feeling slightly dizzy. There was a ringing noise in my ears. Tim must have seen my distress right away. "Peter? Are you okay?" His concerned voice brought me back to reality. I didn't want to keep him here. I knew it must be awkward for him. I also needed some time to think alone. "Yeah, I'm okay. Do you still have the email with the pictures?" "Yes, I couldn't delete them before we met." "Can you send them to me? Here's my personal email address," I said, jotting it down on a notepad. "Oh, and before I forget." I pulled $30 from my pocket, knowing my clothes at the cleaners could wait. "Here." "I don't want to take your money," he said. "I don't think I should take it." "That's not true. You need the money, and I wouldn't feel right if you didn't accept it. You paid $20 plus the printing costs. $30 should be enough." He must have realized I was serious, so he took the money, grabbed his bag, and headed for the door. "I've got to get to work. My shift starts in an hour." I nodded at him. I would have offered him a ride, but Paige had our car. Instead, I reached out my hand as he stood by the door. "I appreciate it. Thank you." We shook hands, and he left. I was left alone with my thoughts and worries. Tim had said these photos were taken last Monday. I couldn't remember much about that day with my wife. I was focused on work at the time. Paige had come home late that Monday night after I was already in bed, so we didn't talk until the next morning. She told me she had a study group the night before that lasted until almost midnight. She looked tired, and I believed her. She was nervous about going back to school and would study all the time if she could. I looked over the pictures again. How could she do this? Why did she think it was okay to betray me? How long had it been happening? Would she ever tell me? Was she serious about this other person? Then I remembered that while we missed each other last Monday night, last Tuesday she came home an hour after I did. That night, I had tutoring at the high school, and I usually got home around 9 p.m. Paige didn't come back until after 10 p.m. When she walked in, she seemed in a hurry and not very happy to see me. Her mood changed when it was almost bedtime, becoming unusually warm and affectionate. We shared a tender moment that night, and she seemed ready from the moment we entered the bedroom. I was the one who said I was tired when we finished. If Paige were being unfaithful, she had been very good at hiding it. I wouldn't have suspected anything was wrong based on how she acted. The rest of the week was quite normal. Most of the phone calls I remembered came for her, mostly from her sister Dana or her mother. There were also some telemarketers. She could have made other calls while I was out, but there weren't many chances for that. I thought of what else we did that week. We went out for dinner on Friday, saw her parents on Saturday. There were no fights, no arguments, and no close moments beyond that one night. Our physical life together had become irregular over the past year. I thought that was due to our talks about starting a family and, of course, Paige's worries about her studies. Our plans to have children were on hold while Paige focused on getting her degree. If we did have kids, it would be a while. I really had given up on that topic. 3 years ago, I started talking about it, and months later, Paige announced she wanted to go back to school. I pushed my wish for a family aside. Kids! What was I thinking? It seemed we were unlikely to have any children, at least not together, especially if those pictures showed what I feared. But maybe I was overreacting. I wasn't sure if the pictures meant there was a serious relationship or just a brief moment. It was just a kiss. She might not have been particularly close with this guy. Maybe it was something new. The pictures looked troubling, but perhaps we could move past this. I had to trust that Paige would be truthful about her relationship. If I couldn't trust her, I didn't know what I would do. I had always believed that betrayal marked the end of a marriage. But that was for other people. Now, thinking about it happening to me felt unsettling. There was another issue. I knew something from the pictures that others wouldn't. My wife, though loving at times, wasn't someone who often showed affection openly. In fact, aside from when we started dating, she rarely expressed her feelings in public. She joked about it as trading spit. That was just one of her quirks that I got used to in our marriage. But now she was seen with someone else, sharing a moment of connection. Was he encroaching on her personal space? It didn't seem like it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I felt stuck. One moment I wanted to end things, and the next I wanted to hold on to her as my wife. I understood that having a partner in graduate school could be risky. Many couples face challenges when one is so busy, and the other carries more of the home responsibilities. Friends had warned us about this. I expected her to be busy with schoolwork for 50, 60 hours a week, and maybe another 20 in study groups. We had discussed this challenge and prepared for it. Paige had promised she would talk openly about any issues that might arise. Since it was late September, I kept thinking it was far too early for us to have problems, especially not like this. I could bring up the pictures with her, but I didn't have any clear evidence of another relationship. Plus, she might just laugh if I mentioned the kiss. Still, I knew I needed to talk to her. If I could look her in the eyes, I could find out the truth. But something made me feel it was too soon. I would feel more secure if I knew more about both of them first. It also bothered me to think that I didn't realize she had been unhappy with me. I felt tired. I would have done anything for Paige, and I often agreed to what she wanted. Looking back, it felt like my entire marriage had been about me giving in to her wishes. The last 3 years had shown just how committed I was to her. When she wanted a bigger apartment, we moved not once but twice. She thought my old Chevy wasn't fancy enough for us, so we got a better car. Teaching wasn't exciting for her anymore. She wanted to go back to school. I supported her and helped pay for her education. When she needed a car for classes, I gave her mine and took the bus or walked. Her decision to change careers was the hardest for me to accept. I was her biggest supporter. When she considered getting an MBA, I encouraged her and even helped pay for tutoring. I spent many evenings preparing her for the entrance exams. Whenever she felt unsure, I was there to help her feel more confident. I saved for 2.5 years to cover her tuition and made several significant purchases for our home that she thought we needed. As I thought about each of my sacrifices, I realized I was attributing more of my feelings to her influence than was fair. I couldn't blame her completely for how I felt. She didn't pressure me into those choices. She expressed her desires in a gentle manner. I was the one who embraced her ideas. She was my wife, and I wanted to see her happy. It was something I was glad to do. There was no pressure involved. As her husband, I felt responsible for her happiness, but the realization that I might have been too eager to please weighed heavily on me. Relationships are never perfectly balanced. At times, one person gives more than the other. Paige and I weren't competing. We were trying to build a life together. But really, a good relationship should be about both partners giving their all. I was giving everything, but it felt like she wasn't doing the same. Now, my love for her felt complicated. I started to feel foolish, but it wasn't my pride that hurt. It was my heart. I felt sad about the dreams I was losing because of her, dreams I thought we both wanted. Did Paige see my willingness to support her as a flaw? Did my way of caring for her play a part in her choices? I hoped not. If she had misunderstood my love, I wouldn't have known how to navigate that. I loved her deeply, and I would have made the same choices again if given the chance. Trusting those we love is a natural part of relationships. Though I generally avoided strong reactions, I was overwhelmed with conflicting emotions in that moment. I quickly remembered the consequences of such thoughts. If I acted upon them, my life would change forever. They just weren't worth it, but contemplating my frustration helped ease my heartache. I only had questions. There were no clear answers. Nothing matched what I expected. I couldn't understand the thoughts circling my mind about my wife. They didn't seem to reflect who she was at all. My questions kept leading me in circles. When I finally looked up, it was 5:30 p.m., half an hour after work ended. The door opened and Noelle walked in. I barely registered her presence at first. The photos remained on the table. I should have put them away, but I wasn't preoccupied with concealing my feelings from her. It felt selfish, and I regretted it almost immediately. The photos were too compelling to ignore. She stood behind me, taking in the sight. Minutes passed in silence until I heard her take a deep breath. "Come on, let's get out of here," she said firmly. "My mom is cooking dinner. There's always room for one more." I turned to see her face. I'm not sure how I looked, but she seemed taken aback. I softened and finally spoke, my voice probably quieter than I meant it to be. "I don't have any plans now. Your offer sounds nice." With Noelle leading the way, we walked out of the building and into the underground area connecting the buildings in town. A few minutes later, we reached the parking garage and got into her car. I don't remember much of the ride. We didn't speak until we were in her car and I settled into the passenger seat. "You know you don't have to do this? I might not be good company tonight," I warned her. "Don't worry. My mom's cooking will cheer you up, and if that doesn't help, she won't let you feel bad," she replied. "Your mom comes over to cook for you?" I asked, trying to change the subject. "Yes. You haven't met her yet. She's been living with me for a year and a half. I knew Noelle's mother was a widow, just like her. It made sense for them to support each other." "Really? I didn't see her at Tim's farewell dinner, but I've been to your house several times in the last 18 months and never saw her." "Well, she and my aunt were on a cruise that week for Tim's party. I pity the captain, though. I bet having my mom on a ship was an adventure. You should ask her to show you the pictures. The other times she was away. Mom usually stays out of the way when I have company." I smiled at that. Noelle looked a bit shy after saying it. An awkward silence was creeping in. "It's okay. Please don't worry about tiptoeing around me tonight." A few minutes later, we arrived at her townhouse garage. Noelle lived in the Fairmont area of the city, close to the art museum. Her house was a modern 3-story townhouse, complete with a garage, a terrace, and a balcony attached to the guest room. This was my 4th or 5th time visiting this year, and every time I felt like I could have chosen the same layout and decor. She had shown me around a couple of years ago, and the whole place felt warm and inviting, with big windows letting in lots of light and warm colors throughout. Each room felt welcoming. Being there was like stepping away from the tension of my marriage into a different space. Besides the lovely decor, there was a delightful smell coming from the kitchen. After showing me into the main living room, my host excused herself and went upstairs. As I sat down on the sofa, a woman walked in from the back of the house. I stood up to greet her. She looked to be in her mid-40s, definitely too young to be Noelle's mother. She was a bit shorter than Noelle, petite, but with a curvier figure. The cheerful smile on her face made it clear that she was indeed Noelle's mother. You could see where Noelle got her looks. They shared serious eyes, and her hair had the same shiny black color as Noelle's. However, that's where the similarities ended. Her mother's outfit was more fitted, and she walked with a comfortable confidence. I thought this boded well for Noelle as she got older. Even though this woman was likely 20 years or more older than me, I still found her presence captivating. I realized I was blushing, which was embarrassing since I hadn't had the chance to admire a friend's mother like this since becoming an adult. She naturally radiated charm, and it was hard not to notice. As she walked toward me with an elegant grace, her eyes sparkled when she looked at me. Her smile was bright, and her face was lovely. Considering my own situation, this was the last thing I should have been thinking about. Yet she pulled me out of my earlier feelings of sadness. "Mrs. DeStefano?" I said as I stood and reached out my hand, only to be met with a warm embrace before she stepped back. I was a bit taken aback by that greeting. "Actually, my name is Ruggiero. DeStefano is Noelle's married name, but you can call me Muriel. Welcome to our home. You must be Peter," she said, her voice melodic. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, surprised that she recognized me. She must have seen the confusion on my face because she quickly explained. "Noelle told me about you volunteering with her on the adult literacy project. I also remember you from the pictures she took at your dinner last month. You're quite a topic of conversation here. By the way, are you still really ticklish?" The last part came with a playful smile. I couldn't help but laugh at that question. When I was new on the job and Noelle was my mentor, we played a game. We had to share something personal that not many people knew about us. I told Noelle that I was very ticklish. It was surprising that her mother brought it up 5 years later. Our talk flowed easily, and Mrs. Ruggiero was delightful company. Her quick humor and joyful laughter made me smile. Noelle was right. Within minutes, I had forgotten my worries and was deeply engaged in listening to her mother's stories about her fun times on a cruise. What a lively and wonderful woman. Her excitement felt almost like that of a child. She made it seem like I was right there with her, enjoying all the sights and fun she described. When Noelle returned to sit next to me, I hardly noticed her because I was so captivated by her mother. I only realized Noelle had changed into a more relaxed outfit after dinner when her mother went to the kitchen to make coffee for us. "How are you feeling now?" Noelle asked as we settled back down together. "I feel much better, thank you. You were right about your mother. She has a special way of brightening up the room. It would be great if we could bring her in to make our branch meetings more lively." Noelle seemed to enjoy that remark, but quickly shifted the conversation to something more serious. "Peter, do you want to talk about what's bothering you? If not, that's okay. We don't have to." I felt calmer now, almost like I was looking at my feelings from a distance. "I do want to talk. I need to." I shared with her the call from Tim and how he obtained the pictures. There wasn't much to say. It seemed my wife was being unfaithful. "So, you don't know this man?" "No. That's just one of the many things I don't understand. Honestly, until those pictures, I never thought Paige would do something like that. It didn't cross my mind. The pictures don't tell the whole story, Peter. They might be taken out of context. Before you act on how you feel, it's important to talk to Paige, but make sure you're calm and collected first. Right now, I'm really not in the mood to talk to her." I felt tired just from our brief chat. "You'll keep your cool when you see her tonight, won't you? If you're unsure, maybe you should stay somewhere else. Your dad lives nearby, right?" That question brought me back to full attention. I had already thought about that. Hurting Paige was not on my mind anymore. I quickly told Noelle that. "No, I need to be home. She's not in any danger from me. I wouldn't hurt her. I just want some answers. I can't believe you asked me that." "I've always seen you as someone who stays calm, at least on the outside. But this is a tough situation that might test your patience, so I had to ask. When I walked in on you this afternoon, I had a feeling. It's probably nothing. Anyway, you'll get the answers you need soon." Noelle shifted a little in her chair and spoke softly. "What I'm going to ask might sound odd. Just listen to me before you reply. What if you knew everything about the relationship, if there is one, and all the circumstances? Could you accept an explanation that might help you find peace with it?" Forgive? Just thinking about it upset me. I could feel my anger just beneath the surface when I shared the story about the pictures. Now Noelle was bringing up those feelings again, showing on my face and neck. "Yes, forgive, Peter. I'm not saying you should overlook everything. You don't have all the details yet. I just mean you should be ready to consider an explanation if it makes sense. You need to be open to listening to her if you want any real conversation. I learned that too late myself. If I had been more willing to understand my husband's mistakes, I would have listened to him more." Her voice faded as she remembered. I looked away, at first not believing she felt that way. Then I thought about her own loss. Noelle measured forgiveness with the idea of finality in death. Where there's life, there's hope. Forgiveness seemed to follow that. When someone dies, hope can end. This way of thinking might lead people to accept everyone's flaws as worth forgiving. Since she was my friend, I didn't want to be rude, but I had to challenge her view. If you were in my place, could you forgive, knowing you had been wronged? That's not fair, Peter. I'm not you. This is your marriage we're talking about. I just brought up the idea of possibly overlooking a mistake, if that's what it is. Whether you forgive or not, you need to listen with an open heart. Seek understanding first, not blame. I got that same advice from you about keeping an open heart. Remember Kevin Connolly? I noticed Noelle sitting closer, a playful glint in her eyes. Oh, so that's why you brought it up. I guess I'll never hear the end of it. I couldn't help but smile when I said that. I thought he was a nice guy. I wasn't trying to set you up with him. Really? You kept pushing me to go out with him for 2 months. What a drag. All he talked about was his dog and his boat. Well, it was a 26-footer. That earned me a frown, but it didn't matter much. Right, a 26-footer, a McGregor if I remember. To make things worse, he kept being overly familiar with me when we were out together. That caught my attention. I didn't know that, I said quietly. I felt hurt to think he had acted so casually with my friend. I quickly looked into Noelle's eyes. She was really trying to help me feel better about everything. She thought like I did, but she didn't want to make me more upset. I appreciated that. Okay, I made a mistake. I misread his intentions. I should have paid more attention to him. Am I making the same mistake with Paige? I might be able to forgive her, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I will always remember what she did, just like you remember Kevin. That's not the mindset you want to have when you talk about this, Peter, she said, her face serious now. It's not that I don't get the idea of forgiveness, I just think we sometimes put too much importance on it. It doesn't change the main issue you're facing. I learned that long ago. You know, until I was 8, my life felt good. It was just my brother and me. He's only a year younger. We always did things together or with our parents. My dad was my hero. He was a police officer. When I was 8, my mom got sick. She had cervical cancer. Usually people have a good chance of recovery, but not her. She fought for 2 years before we lost her. I almost lost my voice for a moment. Even after all these years, it was tough to talk about my mom. Anyway, my dad struggled after that. He started drinking. I don't know how he kept his job, but somehow he did. The drinking got worse, so my Aunt Robin, my dad's sister, took my brother and me to live with her. She and Uncle James already had 4 girls, so it was pretty crowded with my cousins, but it worked out better that way. When we got to my aunt's, we were the youngest in the family. Our closest cousin, Libby, was 16 at that time. Being so young and the only boys, we were spoiled right from the start. We felt a lot of love during those years, but it still wasn't enough. We missed our mom, and we missed our dad, too. It took my father 3 years to stop drinking. 3 years to remember that his sons were hurting too. I know it was hard for him. He came for us right after I turned 13. After that, we lived with him. So I know about forgiveness. During that time, I had been looking down at my lap, not really facing Noelle. When I finally looked up, I gazed deeply into her eyes. What I found there was kindness and something I couldn't quite identify. Somehow I felt a small smile appear on my face. This woman was not the issue, and here I was pouring out my troubles to her. She was my friend. Suddenly, I felt bad for my thoughts. I knew her well. I couldn't picture her acting in a way that had previously upset me. That was part of why I was so unhappy with my wife. Before I could keep going, Mrs. Ruggiero came into the room with a coffee service. We paused our talk to get our drinks. 1 sip, and I was once again impressed by her cooking. She had made real brewed coffee for us, not the kind that came from a machine. Mrs. Ruggiero was quickly becoming quite the appealing person in my eyes. Mrs. Muriel, this coffee is the best I've ever had. Thank you, Peter. I'm glad you like it. I'll leave you two alone now. I know you have a lot to discuss. Muriel started to walk toward the stairs. I noticed the grandfather clock and saw that it was almost 10 o'clock. Since it was getting late, I figured she was probably getting ready for the night. Thank you, Peter. You just made Mom very happy. We don't often have guests in our home, unless they're family. She really likes you. Fresh coffee is usually only for relatives. I meant it, and please tell her that the meal was one of the best I've had too. I don't know how you manage to stay so fit with her cooking. I should go. We've got an early start tomorrow, I said while standing up. Noelle stood too and briefly left the room. She returned with my jacket. I turned to leave. Wait. I'll give you a ride. Noelle, you don't have to do that. I'm only a few miles away. I can walk. No, I'll drive. We traveled in silence. I was deep in thought about what to do about Paige. By the time I looked up, we were at my apartment, and I didn't even remember giving Noelle my address. Noelle, thank you. Go, get some rest. I'll see you in the morning. When I walked in that night, I found Paige asleep in bed. I was too restless to sleep. I sat in the dark of our living room thinking about the day's events. Maybe Noelle was right about being ready to forgive Paige. It was typical of her to see an opportunity for that. It was a bit ironic, though, since my wife wasn't particularly fond of her. I leaned my head back, staring at the ceiling, comparing the two women who filled my days. Paige and Noelle had met several times. I noticed that although they were polite, they never built a friendship. It was unusual for Noelle, who usually tried to be friendly, while Paige, for her part, responded but kept a distance. Noelle never showed any signs of tension, so I didn't think it was obvious. Paige had a way of keeping her distance without making it obvious. She loved attending the events held by my job. Around other people, she was lively and engaging, charming and funny. With just a hint of playfulness, my wife could brighten any gathering. She had a special talent for getting people to share personal stories, especially men. I thought her good looks were a big part of this. Men often want to impress a beautiful woman, but it was all a show. When we got home, she would joke about my coworkers. I didn't like her comments and told her so, but she kept it up, as if I had never said anything. However, she never criticized Noelle, even though I could tell she didn't like her. At first, I thought Paige might be a bit jealous of my friend. She didn't have many close female friends and seemed to be wary of women in general. Later on, I realized that she disliked Noelle simply because she was Italian. The funny thing was, I'm half Italian myself, from my mother's side. After figuring that out about Noelle, I tried not to mention my job much at home. I knew Paige didn't like the extra hours I spent at work, so I avoided talking about my day or co-workers. Balancing work and home life became very important for me. In a way, the line my wife drew between my job and our family turned out to be a good thing. Strangely, it was Noelle who often reminded me to leave work on time so I could go home. This rarely worked, and we turned it into a joke. I'd say I was leaving, but I always needed a few extra minutes, and hours would pass. Then we'd chat in her office until I finally headed home, leaving her to keep working late. Years back, not long after I started working with Noelle, she shared some details about her husband during one of our late-night talks. I had heard she was married but didn't know much about it. I only knew she was a widow by then, and we had built a trust between us. She told me they met in college and dated for several years. 2 years after they got married, he wanted to start his own auditing business. Tragically, on his very first project at a client's site, he lost his life in a chlorine accident caused by a train crash. This happened shortly before I joined the company. Learning this helped me understand her better. We didn't often discuss our family histories in detail, but that night was the anniversary of his passing, and she needed someone to talk to. I stayed with her until nearly midnight as she shared stories about her marriage and the husband she still missed a lot. From what she said, he seemed like a kind person, and I would have liked to meet him. It was especially hard for her that they never had children. That conversation really impacted me. It made me think about how fragile life is and how important family can be. Like Noelle, I also believed that having children would be a natural part of my marriage. There was always time in the future, but now I wasn't so sure about that. In our 3rd year of marriage, I started talking to Paige about starting a family. We were both settled in our jobs, and I had saved a little money. We had talked about kids early on in our relationship, and Paige had shared her desire for them, too. We would joke about how many we would have, 4, which was my idea, or 2, which was hers. Paige had some trouble with birth control, so we used other methods to prevent pregnancy. This became a routine for us that I followed closely. I thought having kids was never a problem, just an issue of timing. How could I have been so mistaken? These thoughts swirled through my mind as I sat in that dark room that night. I glanced at the clock and saw it was almost 2 a.m. My mind had been racing for hours. Despite the coffee I had, I felt mentally drained. That was the last clear thought I had before sleep took over. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I wanted to get up, but my body wouldn't move. I slowly realized someone was shaking me. Peter, wake up. It's 7 a.m. You need to get ready, a voice said. Opening my eyes, I saw Paige crouching in front of me, worry on her face. I stretched and then stood up, feeling the need to go to the bathroom first. I wasn't sure if Paige was worried about me not saying anything. As I splashed water on my face, her image faded from my mind. When I returned to the bedroom, Paige was getting ready by putting on her makeup. I wondered if it was strange that she was doing that for a day filled with lectures and study groups. Did she always dress up for her classes when she was teaching? I couldn't remember, and that thought bothered me. Should I have noticed something earlier, or was I just overthinking it? That thought eased my mind, but I recalled that she usually wore makeup, no matter the occasion. I felt it was too late to worry now as I began to unbutton my shirt. Luckily, my moment of self-doubt was interrupted by my curious partner. You must have had a rough night. You've never fallen asleep in the chair before. You haven't been drinking, have you? Paige asked, a small laugh escaping her. Her smile faded when she saw my face. What's wrong, Peter? I was just joking, but this isn't like you. Something has been bothering me. I just have to ask you directly, are you seeing another man? There it was, the question out in the open. I wished I could say it more smoothly, but I couldn't. She tilted her head as if trying to look past me. For a moment, her eyes widened, then she turned away slowly. A moment later, she faced me again. Her voice was firm. What? You can't be serious? My expression must have given it away. She shook her head in disbelief. I can't believe this. I've only been in class for 2 months, and you're bringing this up? She moved toward the window, staring out. I just can't believe this. Why would you think that? Are you saying I'm cheating on you? With who? A classmate? A professor? Or am I seeing the dean's secretary? I maintained my serious tone. You were seen last week at the bar with another man, someone who was too friendly. Well, your information is wrong. They didn't see me, and you know I would never do something like that. Are you upset that I'm back in school and not working? Which is it, Peter? Do you resent supporting us while I'm studying? Or is it the time I spend on my studies? If it's a problem, just say it instead of... So it wasn't you? I interrupted her. Whatever she had been doing with her makeup didn't soften the fierce look she gave me from across the room. I felt like we were on the edge of a huge argument. I decided to step back before things got worse. I had what I wanted to know. I went into the bathroom and closed the door behind me. On autopilot, I took a quick shower and shave. When I came out, Paige was gone. I heard her in the kitchen as I got dressed, and then I heard the front door shut. She left without saying another word. She lied. Maybe I was foolish to expect the truth, but I felt I deserved it. I didn't want her to make me feel guilty for asking. She lied to me. She stood across the room, looked me right in the eye, and told a lie. That simple act of dishonesty hurt more than if I had found her with someone else. I felt completely shaken. Somehow I pushed those feelings aside. I had responsibilities that day, other tasks that needed my attention. I had to concentrate on my work. That morning, I chose to walk for half an hour to the office. It meant arriving just before the meeting, but my body needed some movement. The rain made it a dreary day for a walk, but I kept going and felt much better when I reached the building. All the executives we invited to the meeting showed up. Our presentations went well, and the audience asked many good questions. By the end, we had several solid leads, making the event a clear success. As I walked back to my desk, I was surprised at how easily I had pushed thoughts of my marriage aside, at least for those few hours. I was skilled at sorting out different parts of my life. Like compartments on a ship, if one area faced trouble, the others could still stay strong, helping me stay afloat. My partner deceives me, my marriage is in trouble, but I keep moving forward. This idea made me smile. People aren't like ships. Not all compartments work the same. Keeping my life sorted meant I could avoid what was unpleasant. There were still things I needed to do to find out the truth, and I would need support for that. Chapter 3. Seeking support after work, I visited my dad. He still lived in the same row house where I grew up in South Philadelphia. While he and the house remained unchanged, the neighborhood was changing rapidly. What was once a close-knit community was now seeing more young professionals moving in. All around him were young people. Most were families, but there were also young single women living nearby, and for some reason my dad seemed to catch their attention. Though he insisted he wasn't romantically involved with any of them, they visited his house often. It was as if he was reliving his younger days. Given his background, I found the shift quite surprising. As I turned the corner, I saw two young women coming down the steps from his house. They seemed like students, happy and chatting, carrying books as if they were coming from a class. I could only shake my head and smile as we walked past each other. One thing that never changed, though, was his way of tackling problems. He had been a police officer for most of his life and had worked his way up to inspector. Now retired for 5 years, he still had the same strong presence he did when I was a kid, and he still thought like a cop. He would look at the evidence more clearly, and if I needed help, he could guide me. I knew my dad had connections all over the city. If anyone could help me with my issue, it was him. This was new for us. I didn't usually ask my dad for help. I had chosen to be independent from a young age, and he was not included in my decisions. Sometimes I thought he wanted to be more involved, but he held back. This time felt different. I told him about finding Paige with another man. He listened quietly, nodding now and then. When I finished, he spoke. "I think you need more information, Junior. I know just the person. Let me see the pictures." That was all he said before he examined them. A few minutes later, he started writing something down. "Here, you should talk to this guy. He's a private investigator, the best around. I'll call him. He may want to meet you. The sooner you handle this, the better. What's your schedule like tomorrow?" I was surprised by how quickly Dad summed things up. He didn't ask how I felt or anything about Paige. Maybe I expected too much, but it bothered me that he assumed my 6-year marriage was over without further discussion. "After you start the investigation, I'll reach out to Liz Fallon. Your wife's lawyer will probably back down once he knows she's on your side." I hadn't thought of calling Aunt Liz. She was my mom's best friend and close to Dad, too. She had been a family court judge for 20 years and now worked in private practice. Aunt Liz was well known for her expertise in child custody and was also tough when it came to divorces. "By the way, how are you doing with money?" he asked. "I'm okay, I think," I replied. This was the first time I had thought about my finances. Dad smirked. "You think? We're talking about around $10,000, Junior. If you haven't thought about it, just know it's cheaper to keep her." "At what cost?" I replied sarcastically. "I came here just to talk. I only found this out yesterday. I'm still trying to understand it all, and now you've got me divorced." I felt very tired, and it showed in my voice. "I'm sorry, son. There are couples who do survive betrayal. It might not be the same afterward, but it is possible." I closed my eyes for a moment. Of course, I had thought about ending things with Paige. That thought had been running through my mind ever since I saw the pictures. But hearing my dad say it made that idea feel much more real. "Now you're making assumptions about me. We both know that's not who I am." He nodded. "No, it's not. I'm not trying to make assumptions. I was about to ask if you needed any money. I can handle it. But thanks for asking. You didn't mention anything about the pictures," my dad answered right away. "What can I say? Those two seemed very close in public, Junior. I hate to say it, but I think they're more than just friends. Did you see how people looked at them? They were not shy at all. By the way, did your friend say how long he watched them?" "He said they were there for at least a couple of hours," I replied. "Dad, it seems like you were expecting this." "I was," my dad said as he got up and went to the kitchen, leaving me to think about what he just said. I heard him make a phone call and then come back to sit down a few minutes later. "You're all set for Thursday morning." I must have shown my surprise because he seemed to be waiting for me to ask more. Then he suddenly said, "Junior, she wasn't honest with you about where she was that night." "How do you know that?" "You have your mother's straightforward nature, so I figured you asked her. If you hadn't, you wouldn't be coming to me." He said this with confidence. Then he added another thought. "She probably said she wasn't at the restaurant and then tried to make you doubt yourself. You caught her off guard. She feels guilty. If she wasn't, she wouldn't have felt the need to be misleading. Sure, she can have a drink with a friend, but clearly there's more to it. I hope you didn't tell her about the pictures. No, I didn't mention them. Good. I didn't think you would. It's a shame because this might be something your marriage could survive. Just being seen at a restaurant shouldn't make you think about divorce. Under normal circumstances, I would say to work it out, but with Paige, it's different. What do you mean by that? Never mind, you have other concerns. No, Dad, I want to understand. You've never said anything like that about Paige before. Have I not? Remember over a year ago when you told me she was going back to grad school, and I asked if you two discussed it? You said you had and that you had a plan, finances. I remember that conversation. It was the first time you asked about my finances. Why is that important? You mentioned you had some savings, but I wondered about Paige's share. You avoided my question. Later, you mentioned that she was upset about having to take out loans, especially if they were in her name, even though you promised to help with the payments. Do you remember that talk? I did remember that day with my father. It felt awkward to answer his questions then. It was almost like he was interrogating me. He didn't have the right to ask about our relationship. Our family finances were not something to discuss openly. Back then, I didn't realize he was trying to make a point. What surprised me was your decision to move to a nicer apartment just months after committing to graduate school. Don't get me wrong, it's a lovely place, but I knew it cost a lot. Was that Paige's idea? I shook my head. His take on things felt unsettling but true. I guess now I look foolish. I just wish I knew why she did this. Don't let it bother you. You might never find out. When I was working, I saw lots of situations like this. Sure, I often saw couples at their worst, but I've learned that people stray for different reasons. For women, it's usually one of three things: financial security, emotional connection, or a desire for change. We can set aside the idea of change since you haven't done anything to deserve that. So it must be financial or emotional, and I'm betting on the financial. It fits with Paige's past. My guess is this guy has a lot of money. Think about it, kid. You both planned for over 2 years for Paige to go back to school. You saved to help her reach her dream. With this in mind, why would she risk her marriage and future for a fleeting connection? Paige isn't naive. She's not likely to be swayed without reason. No, the guy probably has a lot of resources. I was taken aback by my dad's view. I wanted to believe that Paige was just caught up in a moment with someone based on attraction. Oddly enough, if it was just a superficial thing, it would have made me feel better. I never thought she would choose to betray me on purpose. My face must have shown my confusion, because he kept explaining. Kid, the woman hasn't invested anything in your joint future. She spends her money on looking good. You've been supporting her lifestyle ever since you got married, and yet she still feels entitled. But it's not just her being demanding. Many women like nice things, and their partners appreciate that, too. Your wife isn't like that. She's more about what she stands to gain. His expression turned serious as he continued. However, it's your actions that make me think your marriage is challenging. What about my actions? Kid, how did you feel when you first saw those pictures? I was upset, almost sick to my stomach. Were you ever angry? Did you feel like someone took something from you, or were you just accepting that she had made choices that hurt you? What does that matter? When this is all over, I want you to promise me something. I was starting to get frustrated with him. He was avoiding the main point, but he wouldn't just say it. What is it? I asked. That you will sit down and talk with someone? I was surprised. Paige had been unfaithful, and now my dad wanted me to see a counselor, but that was a discussion for later. There were important things to figure out. I had another question, too. Dad, if things don't go well, I might need to move. Can I stay with you? Just for a month or two? Of course. You're welcome any time. Stay as long as you need. I have plenty of room, and I'd love the company. There's just one thing. I'm thinking of selling the house next spring. Oh, I didn't know. I shouldn't have been shocked. A big house for one person was not a stable situation. Still, it was the place where I grew up. I've been getting offers for almost a year. Investors are all over this area, and most aren't even from here. For what they're offering, I could buy a smaller condo nearby and still have nearly 100,000 left. Wow. That was my first thought, too. You know the gas station at 12th and Catherine? I nodded, recalling the place where I filled my bike tires as a kid. The owner has an offer of $1.5 million but is waiting for an even $2. I shook my head. I'll never understand how markets work. Who would pay that much for a piece of land or spend $400,000 on a small house? Not me, even though I liked the city. We talked about houses in the area for a bit longer, then shifted to a more positive discussion about our family. It felt nice to catch up on the stories of my relatives. I didn't want to admit it, but it was also comforting to spend time with my dad. Chapter 4. Of Cabbages and Kings at. Exactly 9 a.m. on Thursday, I walked into the offices of Hollis and Willow's Private Investigations. While I was signing in, a large man, probably in his 50s, walked into the lobby. "Mr. Stewart?" he said, locking eyes with me. "Yes. Are you Mr. Hollis?" He nodded and extended his hand. "Nice to meet you. Follow me." He led me to a meeting room, quickly closing the door behind us once I was inside. The room had a small table with a few chairs. I noticed a hidden screen in the ceiling and whiteboards on the front wall. It reminded me of my own office. It was funny how our jobs were similar. We both worked with information. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea? Water?" I shook my head and waved my hand to say no. "Okay, so I take it you have a personal issue you want us to help with?" "I think my wife is being unfaithful. I don't have enough proof. I need you to find out more. Any information you gather will help me in a possible divorce." "You seem quite sure about this. What makes you think that?" I reached into my bag and took out the envelope with the photos of Paige and her companion. I handed it to Hollis. "The woman in the photo is my wife. I don't know the man with her. These pictures were taken about a week ago at a restaurant near Penn's campus. A visitor who was there took these photos. My wife wasn't the main focus. A friend who recognized her convinced the photographer to capture this moment. It looks like she is at ease with this person. You have a reason to be concerned." Hollis leaned back in his chair, which seemed a bit small for him. "I assume you haven't talked to her about what you know or asked her for an explanation." "Actually, I did. She didn't tell me the truth." "That's typical. People often don't admit the truth in situations like this. I also realize you've never used private investigation services before?" "No." "I don't want to waste your time, Mr. Stewart. Let me explain what our firm does. Unlike many of our competitors, a lot of our cases involve infidelity. Usually, most of our clients are women seeking reassurance regarding their partners, but we have more men coming to us these days. Regardless of who is involved, you should know that our investigations produce solid evidence. We may provide you with schedules, bills, photos, and sometimes videos. We work legally, but not all of our findings can be used in court depending on how we gather them and other factors. Once you see this evidence, you can't forget it. It's permanent. That's why we have this meeting, Mr. Stewart, to prepare you. Based on where we'll need to go and how much detail you want, our rates are usually between $80 to $100 per hour for each investigator. For your case, we're looking at a flat fee of $5,000, provided that we take your case. Our work often leads to changes in relationships, but I suggest marriage counseling as a less costly and stressful option." He paused for a moment, looking back at the photo, then locked his gaze on mine. "We always look for clear proof. Most of the time, it's easy to find what we're looking for. But sometimes we only get clues. If she is being unfaithful, we'll find out. Just know we're not here to pry or cause any trouble. Before taking on a case, we like to know more about our client. Our reputation matters too much to get involved in anything that seems questionable. By the way, our fee would be $2,000. This wasn't your usual sales talk. I felt like I was being interviewed to be a client. In a different situation, I might have left by now. But this man had a sincerity about him that made me want to trust him. I understand, Mr. Hollis. If my wife is being unfaithful, I just want to move on, nothing more. I'm not interested in the other person. I don't plan on taking any action against him. Okay, I believe you. But we may need to have this talk again once we finish our work. Now tell me more about your wife." I spent the next hour sharing my story about Paige, right from when we first met. I talked about her going back to school and how her behavior had changed recently. I found it helpful to share my feelings, as there were things I hadn't told anyone before. Hollis listened closely and took notes. After I finished, he leaned back in his chair and asked, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" "I'm sure. Let me clarify. I'm not just talking about the money. From what you've said, this will likely take about 3 to 4 weeks, since the people involved are probably nearby, and we already have a head start. I'd like to set up some recording devices in your home. We just need your permission, but keep in mind the recordings might not be used in court. We could find out a lot without needing a big team. But I'm also asking, do you truly want to end things with her? This could just be a short fling. She might already regret her choices. After reading our report, you might not feel forgiving. So, I have to ask, do you still care for her? I don't usually ask this, but since you came to us that way, I'm curious. That's a tough question. If I can't trust her, it doesn't matter if I care for her. Love isn't just a feeling, it's about actions. What kind of future could we have? No, betrayal is a deal breaker for me. I get how you feel, but this is all new. You've known about this for just a couple of days, actually only 42 hours. Maybe it would help to take a step back for a moment. My frown must have shown how I felt because he then went back to discussing our agreement. My secretary has some forms for you to fill out, and she will schedule a meeting with my colleague. I have someone ready to start on this task right away. I'll confirm his schedule before you go. We'll meet again soon to discuss what we find. We shook hands, and the meeting wrapped up. As I walked to my office, I felt a deep sense of regret. This was my first clear action since learning about her situation. It felt like entering a dark cave with no light. Paige had been such a big part of my life. If she had been unfaithful, our marriage might be over. But what would life be like without her? By the time I reached my desk, I was feeling very low. Had I rushed into things? Maybe I should wait a few more days. I could call Hollis and ask him to hold off for now. Noelle popped her head around the corner as I was fixing my chair. "Hi, Peter," she said, but her smile faded when she saw my face. "You look really tired. It's 10:30. I bet you haven't had your coffee yet." I tried to smile back at her, but I think she could see I was troubled. I felt uneasy about sharing what had happened that morning. "You guessed it. I haven't had my coffee yet. I just met with a private investigator," I said. "Oh, let's go for a walk then." Instead of heading to the company cafeteria, we left the building. Noelle led the way through the busy streets, but I lagged behind, lost in thought. I couldn't help but notice her outfit. It was a bit different from what she usually wore. This made me feel uncomfortable. She was my friend, and I shouldn't be thinking about her that way. Would I start seeing all my friends differently? Would I always look at women this way? We made our way down some steps to the subway and arrived at an open-air coffee shop at the train station. Noelle turned to me and suggested I get a table while she ordered. I noticed the place was called the New Orleans Experience. I recognized the name. We had used their catering services for our events for years. I didn't realize they had a restaurant. The cafe was quite busy. I took a seat at the only available table and watched her as she moved through the line. I found myself admiring how confidently she walked. When she got to the front, there was a lot of noise. I saw several people. 2 men and a very pregnant, beautiful woman came from behind the counter to greet her. The woman was truly lovely. When I looked away, I noticed a few men around me also admiring her. For some reason, I didn't like how the men were looking at Noelle. One had an eye patch, and the other was a tall, slim man. Noelle didn't seem to mind. They were all hugging and smiling, and her smile made me feel warm inside. Still, I felt a little uneasy. Maybe it was all the attention she was getting. When they greeted her, I found myself feeling annoyed. I had never felt that way before. Usually, I felt proud when some of the salesmen upstairs talked to her, so this feeling surprised me. They all came to our table and were introduced. The man with the eye patch turned out to be her cousin, the woman was his wife, and the other man was his friend. They were all very nice to me, and I tried to be friendly back, but inside, I was still unsure of my feelings. I was working hard to hide any signs of jealousy. Today was the 4th anniversary of their shop, and they were happy that Noelle had come by to see them. I don't think they noticed my discomfort. We enjoyed coffee and delicious pastries after everyone returned to work. I understood why the shop was so busy. The coffee and treats were excellent. It was funny how food sometimes made things feel better. The mood in the place fascinated me. A couple of years ago, I visited a restaurant in New Orleans where, if you finished your meal, they would put a gold star on your forehead. I remembered the feeling of seeing everyone in the restaurant wearing gold stars, just like in kindergarten. I felt a similar happiness as I looked around at the other customers. People were really having a good time. We had been sitting there for 10 minutes, and the crowd was still strong. Whatever made a restaurant feel special, they had figured it out here. Just as I was about to mention this to Noelle, the man named Joey, who I had just met, walked over to our table. "Noelle, do you have a moment?" She turned and smiled. "Anytime, Joey. What can I do for you?" He sat down next to her. "I heard that you volunteer with the literacy project. I'm interested in joining, but I'd like to know more about it before I decide." "What would you like to know?" she asked. "Do the people you tutor know how to read at all? I'm worried that I might not have enough background to help." "Did you have any training before you started?" Noelle shifted a bit in her seat and nodded. Her eyes sparkled as she spoke about something important to her. "Most of the people I've worked with recognize a few words, but some do not. You learn how to work with both types of students. It's not that hard, really. There is a training session to help you understand our roles. It's been a while since I took it, but Peter took it last year. He can explain it better." They both looked at me. I wasn't sure why Noelle turned to me, as she knew much more about the program. I started to share my thoughts on the training. For me, it wasn't just about reading. My students struggled with counting, which was a bigger challenge. But as I spoke, I noticed Joey seemed a bit distracted. He was looking behind me. I turned around, but aside from the crowd moving around, I didn't see anything unusual. I turned back to him, and he was ready to speak. "That guy over there has been watching you two since I got to the table. Do you know him?" I looked again in that direction. "Which one?" "No one really stands out." "Down the hall, he's walking away from us on the right, a tall guy in a gray jacket." "I see him," I replied. He was quite far away now, and I couldn't see his face well, but I recognized him from the photo. I wondered why he was observing me. Joey was still curious. "Any idea who he is?" "Yeah," I answered. Noelle got up, looking concerned. I grabbed my jacket. "I'm sorry to cut this short, but we should go. I'll come by later this week so we can continue this chat." With that, we left. Noelle stayed quiet until we got to the street. Then she turned to me. "This man is not good news, Peter. I don't know what he wants from you, but please be careful." I only nodded, and that was the end of our discussion about it. Chapter 5. The Truth of Things. At the end of the first week of November, I got my last call from Hollis. The report was ready, and we planned to meet the next morning to go over it. The last month with Paige hadn't changed how I felt. She was home more often when I got back, and her study group seemed to come up less in our talks. We spoke every evening but avoided talking about her being with another man. I didn't plan to bring it up. I had made a claim, and it was up to Paige to prove me wrong. If she thought being more open about her time would calm my worries, it wasn't working. She kept me updated on her plans, but I found that information unhelpful. I wanted to learn more about her past. We had been a bit awkward around each other, and there hadn't been any closeness between us for over 5 weeks. That morning, she finally mentioned this before heading off to school. To keep the conversation positive, I asked her to dinner that Saturday. She looked relieved at the invitation. After she left, I went to meet with Hollis and Willow. Hollis greeted me again, this time with a younger man. We all sat together in a conference room. I noticed that Hollis seemed more serious than before. "Mr. Stewart, this is Josh Claiborne, the lead investigator on your case. We have completed our work, and here is our final report," he said, handing me a folder. "We regret to inform you that your wife has been spending time with someone, a classmate named Richard Lindenhall. Our investigators saw them together socially at least 9 times in the past 3 weeks. This is not just a friendship. Their relationship is more significant." He paused and handed me 2 photographs. I took a deep breath as I accepted them. "This is a bit unusual, but on one occasion we observed your wife and Mr. Lindenhall together in a private area at the library." As I looked at the photos, my heart felt heavy. I thought I could handle whatever they showed me, but seeing them together brought tears to my eyes. In one photo, my wife looked happy, her face turned towards him with a smile. In the second photo, it appeared that they were very close. I was shocked to see how comfortable they looked with each other. Hollis and Claiborne were quiet while I took it all in. Finally, after several minutes, I broke the silence. Tell me about him, I asked softly. Hollis raised an eyebrow before answering. Richard Lindenhall is a first-year graduate student like your wife. He's 25, married, and has one child. He comes from a wealthy family. His great-great-grandfather was a business partner of Joe Wharton. He has old money. His father is a senior vice president at Woolsey Company, the biggest brokerage in the city. Richard worked there after finishing his bachelor's degree. His family arranged for him to attend Wharton for his MBA, but those we've talked to don't think he takes his studies seriously. He had only cared about drinking and women. Right now, he lived in Gladwin and had an apartment near the Penn campus. He and your wife went there a few times during the first week we were watching them. How old is the child? I asked, interrupting Mr. Hollis. He looked a bit surprised by the question. He was focused on Lindenhall, not the child. Claiborne answered, 2. I felt a wave of disappointment. This man was married with a family. Paige was making a significant mistake. How would his wife feel if she found out about his actions? I glanced back at the photos while Hollis continued talking. Mr. Stewart, I need to let you know that all of our clear evidence of the affair is from the first 2 weeks of our investigation. They mostly met at his apartment, but also used yours. However, for the past 2 weeks, they haven't met. We even overheard your wife ending things during a phone call in your apartment. Our surveillance confirms her words. It took me a moment to grasp everything he said. I was so focused on the photos of Paige in the library that I nearly asked him to repeat himself. Did he mention our apartment? Paige brought him to our place? We had just moved in at the start of the year, and I had made several friends on our floor. Was she trying to get caught? Or was this Lindenhall's idea? Some way of marking his territory, so now she was finished with him? Did they have a disagreement and decide to take a break? Was that it? Maybe if I heard their conversations, I would know for sure. That thought led to my next question. Can I hear the last recordings you have of them together? I want to listen to them after this. Of course, Mr. Stewart. We can play the last few recordings, Hollis replied, nodding to his partner. The man pressed a button, and soon we were listening to Paige's calls with Lindenhall. Hearing their voices together felt strange. I flinched every time she spoke. The recordings were just as Hollis described. Each call started with Lindenhall reaching out, and each time she told him it was over. In the final conversation, she even mentioned that she would inform his wife if he didn't leave her be. Her tone was firm, her words resolute. Lindenhall seemed to be treated like someone beneath her. I noticed a hint of concern in his voice. That caught me off guard. I had thought Lindenhall was the one in control, but now I wasn't so sure if Paige had approached him first. He sounded desperate while she remained calm. Did I ever sound this way in my talks with her? Well, son, have you heard enough? We have other calls, mostly between her and her sister, but there are a few more. The conversations with her sister revealed that she was part of the trickery. She worked at the same company and seemed to have arranged their meeting. It was all in the report. Now, I'll let Claiborne take over. He can answer any questions you may have. Claiborne began sharing what they had uncovered. For about an hour, details of Paige's actions were revealed. At some point during the meeting, I stopped paying attention. There were important parts I would read about later. Hollis was right. The images would linger in my mind for a long time. Why? I quietly asked myself during a brief pause in the presentation. Excuse me? Hollis asked, looking concerned. Mr. Stewart, did you say something? I said why. Why would she do this? I didn't expect an answer. I glanced at Hollis, but he couldn't meet my gaze. He looked at Claiborne and nodded. I was confused until Claiborne spoke up. Well, Mr. Stewart, we have some idea. From the talks between your wife and her sister, you were referred to as a starter husband. It seems she planned to leave you as soon as she completed her studies. We believe she had her eye on this Richard Lindenhall as her next partner. Huh? It's in our report. Her sister mainly shared this information, but we don't know who came up with the idea or how long they've been working on it. This was planned, I thought. I shut my eyes. This was no accident. I couldn't believe it. It didn't make any sense. For the past 2.5 years, we had worked together with one goal, getting her into grad school. Why would she risk everything we had built? If I believed Hollis, then she had been concealing the truth from me the whole time, and this Lindenhall guy was likely unaware too. This was hard to accept. Was it really possible that we were both being misled? I couldn't shake off the thought. She had this all thought out. I took a deep breath. I had never thought of my wife in such a negative way before. Now, those thoughts came without hesitation. What kind of scheme was this? How could someone perceive such behavior as acceptable? Did I mean nothing to her? Was I just a stepping stone towards her goal? That was enough for me. The meeting ended. Hollis gave me their written report, which was probably a few hundred pages long. Another copy was on its way to my lawyer. He also gave me the electronic version on a CD. I thought it would be easier to look for things that way. What was I looking for? Nothing specific. I guess I was just being thorough. When I left their office, I headed home. Noelle knew about my appointment and urged me to take the day off. I had planned to go back to work, but now I understood why she was worried. I thought I could handle our financial analysis later, but I couldn't focus on that right now. The news I received had shocked me. I was calmer than before, yet I still struggled to believe what I had been told. Was this situation truly over? Did it even matter? She seemed to be involved in another issue. Was that resolved too? The proof against her was clear. Still, I wondered if she had made a big mistake, realized it, and wanted to fix things. There was a small hope for that. Could I accept her if she was honest? Was I fooling myself? It seemed unlikely. She had already been untruthful. She had put me in a tough spot financially. How long had she been planning this? Months? Years? How could I ignore that? What if I chose to overlook her past actions and she remained committed? What then? Could I accept that and pretend nothing had happened? Could I stay married to her while carrying her secret? Could I trust her after all this? Or would I always feel uneasy? As I walked around the apartment, I knew our marriage was in trouble. I was close to ending it, but her recent behavior made things more complicated. Something about her actions didn't add up. What had changed? What made her stop? If only I could find the answer, I might decide what to do next. I felt like I was missing something important. What was Paige up to? If she had ceased her other involvement a few weeks ago, I certainly hadn't gained anything from it. It would have brought me some relief if she had made that choice right after our conversation. She didn't seem any more affectionate toward me. Oddly, she had been more engaged while she was with him. I noticed that we had communicated more in the last couple of weeks, but it felt more like conversing with an old friend. Recently, she seemed especially anxious. When I asked about it, she said she was worried about an upcoming case review. Then she developed a rash, which I thought was due to stress. She had the same issue over a year ago before her grad admissions tests. Whatever the reason for Paige ending her affair, it didn't seem to stem from her feelings for me. Guilt didn't seem likely. Perhaps she was concerned about being discovered. Losing my support seemed more plausible. But if that were true, why did she get involved with him in the first place? That afternoon, I decided to take stock of everything we had in the apartment. Having a list with photos would be essential when it came time to divide our belongings. But I wasn't focused on what I needed to do, so I opted to take a walk instead. I strolled about a mile toward the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, a wide path leading to the art museum. This was the same place where Sylvester Stallone filmed Rocky, standing proudly at the top of those big steps. It was also where I asked Paige to marry me one Saturday morning, and where we took our wedding photos many months later. If things were to end between us, I would choose to do it here, on these very steps, where it all began. With a cloudy November sky above, I remembered how we first met. Chapter 6. How We Met. Throughout my last year of college, I was known as Mr. Serious. This nickname came for various reasons. I was studying accounting, I spent most of my time either hitting the books or working, and I didn't drink. Since many business students had jobs, it was probably the fact that I didn't drink that really limited my social life. I should clarify that I wasn't a recluse. I went on dates, but not very often. I never really started any serious romantic relationships, although I made some good friends from the people I dated. I'm a good listener, which makes me a great friend. Women often shared their concerns with me. Unlike many guys, I didn't rush to give advice. Most guys seem eager to fix things. I learned early on that women like to share what's on their minds. When they talk about problems, they aren't always searching for solutions. They just want someone to listen. So, I listened carefully and only spoke up when they asked for my thoughts. The issue for me was that at 20 I had never been in a romantic relationship that lasted more than a few months, and being just a friend to women wasn't helping me. With my job and busy school schedule, chances for romance were slim. I was looking for ways to meet someone special. A week before finals, my roommate at the time, Moss Farnbach, invited me to a gathering in Westchester. Even now, Moss is very clear about who he is. He loves to have fun, but he also knows when to be responsible. He's one of the kindest and most straightforward people I had met in school, which is why we roomed together during my last 2 years. So I went with Moss and 2 friends to the party. I knew I would be the designated driver for the night. Moss always did that, and it was one reason I was invited. But I didn't mind. I was eager to be on a different campus and meet new people. The party started like most college gatherings. A crowded house, drinks everywhere, some quick dances with uninterested girls, no phone numbers exchanged, and a lot of girls turning me down because they had partners nearby. A couple of hours into this scene, I was ready to wait in the car and listen to the radio until it was time to leave. I'm slowly making my way toward the door, trying to be discreet, when suddenly someone grabs my arm. I turned to see the prettiest girl in the room, a blonde with unique eyes, one blue and one brown. They were captivating. "You're not leaving, are you?" she asked, leaning close to me. "No, I've been looking for you," I replied, trying to sound cool. I knew my response was weak. It must have worked because her face lit up. "Do you want to dance?" she asked, pulling me to the dance floor. I followed her, eager to remember every detail about this girl. She was only a little shorter than my 6 feet. Her wavy blonde hair cascaded over her shoulders, glowing in the dim light like a halo. She looked like she could be a model, especially in that stylish outfit. The song playing was upbeat and loud, and our dancing felt intense and engaging. When I danced with her, it felt different. Our eyes met the whole time, which was rare for me. Thankfully, I knew how to dance, thanks to my cousins. After a few high-energy songs, a slow love song started playing. She pulled me close, resting gently beside me, which surprised me. It felt as if we had been dancing like this forever. The room got really warm, so when the song ended, she took me outside to the porch. There were couples scattered around. Once I adjusted to the light, she leaned in to kiss me, catching me off guard and making my heart race. I can't emphasize how amazing that night was. It ended with us by her dorm room, embracing warmly. That's when Moss found us and pulled me back to the car. About 5 miles down the road, my smile faded. I started to panic. In the excitement, I had forgotten to ask her name, and I hadn't shared mine either. No name, no number, nothing. I turned the car around sharply at the next intersection. Just as we were picking up speed, I heard Moss say, "Peter, what are you doing? Are you drunk?" "I can't believe I forgot to get her name," I said, mostly to myself, but loud enough for Moss to hear. "Paige Erickson? She already knows who you are. Don't worry, there's no need to go back. She'll contact you. You can count on it." I pulled over to the side of the road, surprised by what I just heard. I turned to Moss and grabbed his shirt collar. Moss looked startled. "Hey, no need to get upset. She'll call. She has your name and number." He raised his voice a bit, probably seeing the shock on my face as he got free from my grip. "She's my girlfriend's roommate. She told her all about you. She knew you were coming tonight and wanted to meet you. Do you understand? She wanted to meet you." I just stared at him. She wanted to meet me? Really? I shook my head and a big smile spread across my face. "Hey, Peter, can we go now?" Someone called from the back seat. That broke the moment, and we continued our trip back to our campus. All I could think about was that lovely girl who wanted to meet me, Paige Erickson. The next morning, I decided to ask Moss a few more questions. He explained that Paige found out about me from his girlfriend. I didn't know what had been said, but Moss thought it must have been quite a story because Paige had mentioned me to her sister before I even met either of them. I was amazed. Why was someone so remarkable interested in me? Moss told me to keep it cool. There was no need to reach out to Paige. She would definitely get in touch with me. After a few conversations, I would find out why she was interested. Moss was puzzled too, saying I was a lucky guy. My sense of popularity on campus was rising at this moment. I was overwhelmed and struggled to focus on anything else for the rest of the day. I felt like a zombie just going through the motions. Sure enough, the next evening I got a call from Paige. We talked for several hours. We shared about ourselves. She was from Drexel Hill and I was from Philly. She had a twin sister and 2 older brothers while I had a younger brother. She was studying education, and I was in accounting. We were both finishing our junior years. She was coming out of a relationship that wasn't working, looking for someone with whom she could build a lasting connection. I was eager to step into that role. It wasn't a fairy tale. I had to work, and neither of us had a car. So during my limited free time, usually Sundays, I took a bus for 25 miles to visit her. After a few trips, I think Paige started to wonder about how committed I really was. So, on my fourth trip, she decided it was time for us to strengthen our bond. It was a nice surprise since I hadn't pushed the idea. I had thought about it, though. Spending time with her had been on my mind since we first met, but I wasn't rushing. I really wanted to get to know her better first. It was late morning when I got to her apartment. Her roommate was away for the weekend, so the place was quiet. When the door opened, Paige greeted me with a warm hug. We spent the day together, and after that, we both felt a deeper connection. I was starting to feel more committed to her, and the warmth we shared confirmed our relationship. Paige wasn't just beautiful. She was also very smart. She had great test scores when she entered college. I often wondered why she chose teaching as her major and West Chester for her school. She could have gone to any college. She had a great sense of humor and was quick to make me laugh. She was also very loving. It took my approaching her for us to be together. She never seemed to notice my feelings. I didn't mind. We had a good relationship that worked for both of us. I learned that she wasn't very enthusiastic about some things, but really enjoyed our time together. Being with her made me feel amazing. Paige knew how to lift my spirits like no one else. These qualities made me fall in love with her. So it wasn't surprising when I proposed a few months later and we got married 2 weeks after graduation. However, there were some downsides. Paige wasn't always the most considerate person. She often forgot my birthday, and even after 6 years of marriage, she sometimes overlooked my peanut allergy. But those were small things that didn't happen often. The bigger issue for me was her approach to money. Paige didn't really understand the idea of my money. If I didn't keep track, she would spend without thinking about our expenses. The idea of a budget was unfamiliar to her at first, and even now she reluctantly agrees we need to pay our bills before enjoying activities or outings. I learned this the hard way. During our time dating, I discovered that Paige knew a lot about finance. It surprised me because she planned to teach young children, but she enjoyed reading financial news for fun. She even subscribed to a magazine about business, which impressed me. So, when we first got married, she took on the responsibility of managing our finances. This was mostly my choice. Even though I trained as an accountant, I didn't want to handle our finances. I thought Paige would be better at it. She was very smart and seemed more concerned about our money, so I figured she should manage it. Unfortunately, it turned out that anyone else would have done a better job. Within a few months, she had made a real mess of our budget. We fell behind on rent and bills, and our shared checking account went into the red. I noticed that many of our significant purchases were for her personal items or things for our apartment. Her approach was to spend money on things we didn't really need and delay paying off what we owed. As newlyweds just starting to build our credit, we couldn't afford to be so careless. This led to a big argument, and we decided I would take charge of our finances. That worked for about a month, until the first time Paige had to contribute to the household expenses. Then the disagreement started. I saw her temper for the first time. She believed that my income was to support the family, while her income was for her personal interests. I was surprised by her view. I tried to explain my point of view, but it seemed like her ideas were from a different time. When I mentioned that, she became a bit self-conscious and softened her stance. She did pay her share, but there was still some lingering frustration about it. I tried to make things better by planning nice dinners twice a month at her favorite restaurants. This approach worked well. While I had trouble convincing her with my logic, she loved the idea of going out to eat. Paige is very social, and going out regularly met one of her key needs. She has a natural friendliness that makes her seem approachable. Fortunately, I learned this about her during our courtship, and she was the one who warned me about it. This side of her personality had caused some past relationships to end. She reassured me that she was committed to me. This eased my worries, especially since she stayed close to me when we went out. I noticed how she turned down several people who tried to talk to her when I was around, often with a strong response. In the evenings, she would share the lines men used on her during the day and how she answered them. While this didn't happen every day, it was often enough to make us laugh, and Paige enjoyed telling those stories about the reactions she got. By the time we married, her promises of loyalty and the fact that she worked with young children helped my jealousy fade away. So, after 6 years of marriage, I was comfortable believing that my wife would never be unfaithful. Given our history, the hurt of her betrayal felt even more intense. Why did she do it? Was it about money, like my father suggested? Did she think she could find someone better? I didn't want to believe it was about money. If she liked another man for his looks or personality, that would still be painful, but if it were just about money, it would change everything I thought I knew about her. Now, I had to rethink our entire relationship from the start. Her actions made me question even the smallest things she did. It felt like I was reshaping the image I had of Paige. Suddenly, I was caught in a gust of wind. While I was lost in thought, the temperature dropped and the wind picked up. I struggled to sit still on the granite steps and knew it was time to head home. There was no doubt anymore. We needed to go our separate ways. I still wanted to take stock of our apartment. There was no reason to wait. I noticed I was still carrying Hollis's report, so when I got inside, I tucked it away and began checking through our things. 20 minutes later, I realized that after 6 years of marriage, we didn't own that much in terms of items we could sell easily. After looking through the living room and bedroom, I decided to quickly check the other rooms before focusing on some work projects. Paige got home late in the afternoon. I was in the living room working on a report. She seemed cheerful and came over to greet me. I played along, as this matched her recent behavior of coming home earlier. Before today, her mood had been polite, if not friendly. If today was the day she wanted to mend things after our argument a month ago, I would act relieved. It would buy me some time until she received the papers. Before I could say anything, she went into the bedroom and started searching in the closet. From inside, she called out, "Dana and Rob want us to join them for dinner next Tuesday at Chops in Bala. I said yes for us." "Okay, what's the occasion?" I replied. "Rob was promoted to junior partner, and Dana wants to celebrate," she said, coming back into the room. "Honey, can you help me with this zipper?" She leaned against me, and I felt her hand move unexpectedly. I jumped slightly. She laughed at my reaction. "Oh, are you ticklish?" I recognized that tone. Paige seemed to want to reconnect. A few months ago, I would have gladly joined her, but now I struggled to be around her. "No, it's not that. I think I hurt my ribs yesterday while playing basketball. It's hard for me to stand for a long time." "Basketball?" she asked. "Yeah. We had a game at the high school last night. Some guys wanted to play with their tutors before the adult literacy group graduates next week. I got bumped while trying to make a shot. It still stings a bit." By then, she had turned to face me. Her eyes were warm as she gently held my face. "That's too bad. Maybe we can play another time when you feel better." She then offered a soft gesture before going back to the bedroom. I watched her walk away, her movements playful and light. She looked more like a model than a student. If only she were as reliable as she was beautiful, I wouldn't be in this situation. I regretted thinking she would be a good mother to my children. What was I thinking? Anyway, that story about my injury probably bought me some time. If I knew Paige well, she wouldn't bring it up again for a while, and by then it would be too late. I sighed, realizing I had another gathering to attend, dinner with Rob and Dana. My brother-in-law Rob could be really full of himself, and his wife was just as caught up in appearances. I also knew that Paige often tried to compete with her twin sister. While Paige went to college, Dana started working right after high school. Dana was just as smart as her sister, so I often wondered why she didn't continue her education. Dana had married Rob a year before Paige and I did. At that time, Rob was just graduating from law school. Now he was a lawyer with one of the biggest firms around. It seemed like he had been on the path to success since the day he married Dana because he always made sure to share his achievements whenever we met. Dana was just a bit older than Paige by a few minutes. This small detail allowed her to act like the bossy older sister, which she did frequently, especially in daily phone calls. She and I were never close. We mostly got along for Paige's sake. At 5'7", Dana was shorter than Paige, but still very attractive. With her blonde hair and confident voice, she easily captured attention whenever she spoke. Dana often dominated any conversation, making it hard for Rob to get a word in. When I first met Rob years ago, I found him to be friendly. He had a sharp sense of humor and a great memory. He also had a way of sharing funny jokes and stories that made our talks enjoyable. Being new to marriage and now related to each other, it felt natural for us to become friends, at least for the first few months after the wedding. But then Rob changed. He started acting like his wife, who could be quite rude. Our conversations shifted to mostly focusing on his job. The cheerful guy I first met was replaced by someone who only cared about his career, with a wife who seemed to manage everything for him. Rob and Dana's relationship seemed to revolve a lot around his work and her dreams for their future. Since Dana and my wife talked so frequently, I often heard about their challenges just by being around. I understood I was only getting Dana's cleaned-up stories, but hearing about their achievements from my wife made me want to avoid them even more. Dana enjoyed talking about Rob, and my wife would reply with stories about me. It often felt like they were keeping score on each other's partners. Dinner turned into a test of my patience as the two women exchanged playful jabs. Rob would likely cheer Dana on during these dinners, and she would take over the conversation, often making it hard for anyone else to speak. I never understood why my wife put up with these events. She always complained when we got home, just like every time we had been with them. I snapped back to reality when I heard movement in the hallway. My wife walked into the room wearing casual shorts and a tank top. I couldn't help but think she looked more like a young college student than a 28-year-old wife. She sat close to me, our sides touching. "How about we order Chinese food tonight and watch a movie?" she said, trying to curl my hair with her fingers. I could tell she had a plan in mind and seemed to ignore my open laptop on the coffee table. "That sounds good. We haven't done that in a while." "No, we haven't," she said, sounding a bit sad. "We really should do this more often. I know I need to." Then she leaned in gently, creating a soft warmth between us. I turned to face her, and our faces were just inches apart. Suddenly, we found ourselves sharing a brief, tender moment. I felt her arm around my side, and I made a sound, startled as if she had touched something delicate. "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. We should take it easy tonight." "You look really good," I said teasingly. "All right, let me order the food." "What do you want?" "I'm thinking shrimp and honey walnuts. I'll get mugu gai pan and some egg rolls and we can share." "Chicken for shrimp?" I laughed. "No, I'm not sharing." This sparked a playful tickling match, leaving me breathless and laughing in no time. The rest of the night flowed just like that. We chatted, enjoyed dinner, watched a movie, and cozied up on the couch. We seemed like the perfect couple, sharing moments that felt special. I wondered if she watched my performance with the same attention I gave hers. Later, long after she had fallen asleep, I tried to read part of the investigator's report. But soon, my feelings took over, and I couldn't hold back my tears. I felt as if my heart were shattered, for it truly was. I reread a transcript several times, my eyes blurry with tears, wishing I would find something that could change what I had read. When I finally finished, whatever feelings I had left for Paige faded away. I wished more than ever for her to be out of my life. Chapter 7. Thanksgiving. That Saturday, I made it through dinner with Rob and Dana. Paige continued to play the part of the devoted wife, always keeping a hand on me. This had been going on for days. If I were paranoid, I might think she knew about my plans and was trying to hide something. After dinner, I was in a bad mood. I had to pretend to be cheerful for both of her sisters, and Rob was particularly loud that night. I grinned and nodded, masking my true feelings. I was relieved when we finally left, knowing I wouldn't have to go through that again. The following Thursday, we were set to visit her parents for Thanksgiving dinner. I was preparing for the evening, trying to keep my routine steady. Paige saw the same version of me every day. I tried to be more affectionate, and she seemed to appreciate it. Although we were still not close, it was clear she was growing tired of my decision to hold back. My job gave me a chance to avoid thinking about my marriage. Noelle was at her desk, also struggling with the holiday season. I felt concerned for her this year, and I promised myself to support my friend no matter what happened with Paige, yet keeping that promise was tough. Since my meeting with Hollis, I had become harder to deal with at work. I was moody and snappy with my coworkers, distant with our clients, and generally not very pleasant to be around. Only Noelle seemed to handle my mood swings well. She was unaffected by my attempts to act out. On Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we found ourselves in her office, the last two people still working. The atmosphere was heavy. We both had little to look forward to, except maybe each other's company. We should have left, but instead we stayed and distracted ourselves by going through our list of available sales opportunities. After discussing our last topic, I decided to talk about something more personal. I'm sorry I wasn't invited over for dinner this Thursday. I assume Muriel is cooking? I liked her cheerful smile, and it appeared again. Her eyes lit up as she replied, "No, Mom isn't cooking this Thursday. That job goes to my Aunt Claudia, her oldest sister. But just so you know, I can cook very well, Mr. Smarty Pants." "Oh, really? And should I guess that you'll be the cook this holiday?" "I make a great eggs Florentine, but no, my mother-in-law is in charge for Thanksgiving." Noelle paused for a moment and then asked, "So I take it everything is going well for you?" "My marriage is over, Noelle." She sighed deeply before saying, "I'm so sorry to hear that. I know how much you cared for her. I wish there was something I could do to help." "It will be better after this Friday. That's when I make it official. But before that, there's the coming out party. I'll let everyone know after dinner." I knew my face showed what I was feeling. I didn't want to hide anything from Noelle now. She frowned at my last comment. "Public? Are you really going to make an announcement in front of her family?" "Why not? They deserve to know the truth about Paige, every unpleasant detail." Noelle leaned in closer and lowered her voice. "Peter, you can't do that. Whatever Paige did, this matter is between you and her. I understand you're angry and want to express that, but doing it on Thanksgiving with her family around isn't right. Hurting her family, too, isn't what you want. They'll find out about your divorce soon enough. There's no need to make it worse or ruin their holiday." "Have you ever been tested for health issues?" I noticed Noelle flinch at my question. It's a terrible and humiliating experience. Paige has to feel that same kind of hurt. "I can only imagine how hard that was," she replied. But nothing, Noelle. She let another man get her pregnant." I paused to let that sink in. I should have said that she chose to let him. The report didn't explain why. Noelle looked as upset as I felt. Maybe now she would understand why I had to confront Paige. "Why did she let that happen?" she asked. "I don't know. She claimed she ended the relationship soon after." "I can see in your eyes that you want to address this strongly. But don't. Whatever you're planning, don't go down that path. You might not be able to come back from it. There's more to this than you realize, Noelle. There are other things I can't even discuss with you. What I'm about to do won't really fix anything. Peter, there's nothing you can do to make things right. Even if you embarrassed her in front of her family, it wouldn't be enough to satisfy you. It might sound odd, but living well is the best way to find peace after this." That last comment surprised me. She was quoting George Herbert, reminding me of my high school English class. I remembered another of his quotes: "The best mirror is an old friend." Noelle was correct. I did want to make Paige feel some of the pain she had caused me. Hey, audience! If you liked this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.